bit of a challenge actually following all these profs and doctors and numbers and stats, so I can assure you that my presentation doesn't have a single number on it, no statistics at all. It's based on my experience both as a producer and a user of research and development and extension, and I guess conversations I've had with people on both sides of the table. I flew into Australia yesterday and I had an incident that happened to me that really reminded me sometimes about the attitude between farmers and research. I had seen a man at the airport just very briefly. We then got on a transfer bus, and as I was walking on, he winked at me. And I thought, this is a bit random. I don't know this man. I don't know why he's winking at me. Don't have a clue. He may have perceived a need that I needed him to wink at me. But I can assure you that I wasn't interested in any of his research development or extension. And sometimes that is what farmers feel when they meet up with extenders of research. They have no idea what has been communicated to them or why that this person, this researcher or extender, is even interested in them. I also feel that maybe I got the hospital pass with a $1 million question, which is why are farmers not implementing current research and development? And I can assure you that if I can answer that in the next 15 minutes, I'm probably up for some sort of flash prize. I think it's also commonly referred to, why are farmers so stupid? Why don't they listen to us? We know what they need. When I think about the acid test for research, it's whether people are going to use it for reference, for influence, for change. I think that research needs to be available, accessible, usable, and relevant through a range of means in order to increase the impact of that research. And I think we've just heard about countries where they don't have the access to some of that research, or potentially even, if we think back through the years, some of the research that was around, like subdivision, really wasn't picked up on in the 60s because fencing was so expensive. Whereas now, we can simply do it with a matter of pegs and reels. That's pegs with an E, not with an I. Research. I kind of separated research into private or public. I think there's a need or a nice when it comes to research. The need is whether it actually has a physical need out on farm, or whether it's nice in terms of it being theoretical and it's going to take us somewhere new, like, I guess, biotechnology. I think we also need to think about research as being accessible, and it also needs to be extended to the target in which it's been designed for. It also has to have relevance to current technology that is available on farm or the target market today. So I talk about private for a start. Private, to me, is non-government funded. They deliver to specific needs. They are business and financially orientated. I should also say these are non-farmer levied as well. It's do or die. Do they play in the real world? Maybe, maybe not. They have the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. So maybe there's a question about credibility or independence. Public. Perceived farmer needs? Maybe. Farmer levy means that it's driven towards sector change, not necessarily individual change. Potentially there are some government responsibilities involved. Sometimes there's proof of theory that drives the actual research. Credibility can also be an issue in some countries or with some sector research organisations. A tendency for one size fits all. There's also a bit of a perception that quantitative science is sexy and qualitative science is soft. And possibly a perception by the people that need that research, that if it's free, that it has little value. So to me it comes down to, I guess, are we asking the right questions? I was interested with the document that was mentioned earlier about research and development driving productivity growth. I had the opportunity to scan that document a bit earlier. And in that scanning, nowhere did I see any mention of what the needs were for different research projects. No mention of what farmer needs were. This is on the back of a less than 3% change from technology and having averages of research being delivered on farm over 50 years. So it kind of makes me wonder how relevant the material that we're actually using today actually is when we're talking about averages over 50 years. And yet, as we've just heard from some of the previous speakers, we've had a real slowdown since the 1990s if we exclude China. So is the research wrong, or is it the extension delivery that's at fault? Do we really know what farmers want? Do farmers really know what they want? And can they articulate this to us? And what did the research deliver? How are we evaluating what we're actually doing? Al Schultz, who is a consultant in Canada, is currently undertaking an international review of farmer needs assessments. His initial statement, as his report is due out next week, is that the needs assessments across most of the modern world are horribly outdated. Horribly outdated. I certainly know from some work that I did in 2009 looking at farmer perceptions towards mastitis that there is a disconnect between knowledge, perception and reality, potentially for both scientists and farmers. That we have to think of farmers as onions and not cabbages. We need to take the layers of information that they believe to be true and strip it down to their core beliefs before we can overlay new information, new technology. Let's deconstruct before we reconstruct. When I did the mastitis research in 2009, and mastitis in New Zealand is probably one of the most researched and extended topics for the dairy industry. New Zealand dairy farmers felt that they knew more about mastitis than any professional because they deal with it on a day-to-day basis. So no new information that were coming out to that group was going to be taken on board because they did not perceive the researchers to have the credibility to deliver that information. There's also research NIMBY, not in my backyard, or parochialism. If it's not conducted, for example, in Taranaki, then it has no relevance in Taranaki in New Zealand. I think that also has some challenges when we take out some of the research stations that are in specific areas with specific climatic conditions and soil types. We need to also think about the relevance of that. There are also, I think, regional differences in extension skills, communication and education. When I think back to the early 90s and I was working on the north coast of New South Wales, I was working with older extension agents who knew their farmers intimately. They knew their families. They knew what drove their businesses. They could tell them the research and extend it in such a way that it was meaningful and useful to those farmers. And those farmers had a respect for those extension officers because they'd been working with them for so long. In my experience, it doesn't exist anymore. We're all too busy. And I certainly know myself, when I look at new research that comes across my desk, unless there's an immediate wow factor, I don't even tend to look at it because I'm overloaded with information that comes through my mailbox. The perceived quality and consistency of advice. Where did it come from? Who had the vested interest in designing or developing this new research methodology or technology? Has it come from an animal health company? And if so, if it was funded by them, it doesn't matter who did it. Already, for me as a farmer, that information is biased and dodgy. This is what they told me when it came to mastitis research. That we have information, gosh, I'm actually on the right slide, have I? Yep, information tiers. Farm owners, managers and operators, staff and professionals. Who's actually getting the research that we're extending? If it's coming out in publications that go to the farm owner, who in New Zealand may not be on farm, may not have any relationship with the day-to-day activity, then sending them that research is a waste of time. Knowledge applied versus knowledge supplied. Quite often, information is given to farmers as a general rule, without any, here Joe, this is how you would do it on your farm in your situation. And certainly where I've seen the most success is when that knowledge that's been supplied has also come almost with a how-to handbook of how you adapt it and adopt it on farm. I think we also need to ask the so what factor. So what does this actually mean to me? If you're telling me that this information is one of my key profit drivers, why don't I see that? Research collaboration. I think we need to see far more public versus private collaboration and national versus international. I certainly know in my own country we have a great tendency for reinventing the wheel rather than stealing someone else's research and adopting it or adapting it.